That's the unfortunate thing, right? With so many games out there, is someone might say, "Oh, you played that. Did you like it?" You know what? I'm not sure. I stopped and I started playing. Oh, you stopped playing, so you don't like it. Not necessarily. There's hundreds of games out there calling our attention at all times.
Welcome to episode 4 of the Normal People Gaming Podcast. My name is Duane.
And I'm Michael. What's up, Duane?
A whole lot, Michael. We have new exciting trailers coming out. We have a lot of games that we've been playing because of Steam's summer sale. A lot to get into.
Yeah, definitely. I'm waiting for the Xbox summer sale to start. They've done the Xbox summer sale tease. Yeah, I know. It sounds a little risque.
Sure does.
But the Xbox summer sale tease is for people who I think have Game Pass, basically. But I'm waiting for the real thing, the real deal. Should be starting any day now.
Aren't most of the great games on Game Pass, and don't most people have Game Pass? So why does it matter if there's a sale? Is it for the people that don't have Game Pass, or what am I missing here?
So, right. Yeah, that is actually very confusing. When you have Game Pass, you also get more sale prices on games that are not on Game Pass.
Ah, okay.
And also DLC and stuff like that. I think even when there isn't a sale going per se, DLC is often like 10% off. Especially if you have the game on Game Pass, but then of course they want to sell you the DLC, then you can get it for a little cheaper.
Right. They're raising the Game Pass price, are they not?
They are, yeah. They are raising the price. You know, hey, no one wants to pay more for something that you already have. They are going to start adding a bunch of like the Call of Duties and the Activisions. I get it. I'm not... I think it's still going to be worth it for me, personally. Like, I'm not like defending them. I'm not doing the corporate shill thing. Would I like it to be cheaper? Yeah, obviously I would. I'm a consumer.
You actually posted in our Discord that you were thinking about canceling it.
I thought about it very briefly. Yeah, the reason is because I am such a habitual gamer for like the games that I like. So the games that I like are games that I can play for a long time. So Bethesda games, stuff like No Man's Sky, which we're going to get into here in a moment as well. So sometimes I feel like, do I really need Game Pass? But then, honestly, like, everyone in my family benefits from it.
Yep.
So we actually end up trying lots of games from Game Pass. So $20 a month, yeah, look, it's up there. It's not cheap. But to me, currently, it's still worth it.
It's kind of like Friday night, 4 p.m. in 1993, and you canceled your Blockbuster video membership.
Yeah.
And you've got nothing to do. And you're like, well, you know what? I'll just go ahead and renew my Blockbuster card.
Gotta.
Because I need it now, and I need to go rent a movie.
Which is just a very relatable...
That was not the analogy that you were expecting. Yeah.
This is the most relatable analogy.
Let's use an analogy that's 30 years dated. Why not?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So what have you been playing this week?
I've been having a lot of fun with the not Dying Light, I always get them confused, Dead Island 2.
Very similar games, to be fair, right?
Very similar. In fact, I mean, you could really get into it with the fact that the Dying Light team originally made the first Dead Island games.
Get out of here. Okay, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, yeah.
So many times that happens where like some disgruntled, well, maybe they weren't disgruntled. Maybe they just had a vision that their old studio.
For whatever reason. Yeah.
And they went off and they started their own game.
That's right. But yeah, like Dead Island 2. We're keeping that in there.
It's Dying Island is actually what it's called.
Dying Island, yeah. Dying Island. They should just, honestly, a third team should just come out and make Dying Island.
A mashup.
And skip one. Yeah.
We've seen mashups like that where studios get together and put out a game that's like Curse of the Dead Gods. Remember that?
Right. Yeah. 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 It's fun, especially like indie games. You know, I feel like there's that mentality of like, we got to, stick together or like introduce your fans to my game and, et
It
cetera, et
makes
cetera.
sense.
The Sola DLC went on sale, and the Sola DLC, basically what that is a music festival in the Dead Island 2 world.
You know who the headliner was?
Well, tell me.
Rob Zombie.
Rob Zombie. Yeah, that would have been a good opportunity, unless like he got canceled for something, which, with rock stars lately,
It happens.
you never know.
It does happen.
First of all, I want to say that I've loved this DLC, but the ending of it, I'm at the end. I'm on the last mission.
Powered through that. Must be really fun.
It was a lot of fun. I was just like, every time I had some spare time to jump onto the Xbox, I was playing that.
The gameplay looks so satisfying, like axes to the face and punching through zombies. I mean, they really killed it with the animations and the interactions that you have.
Yeah, it is gruesome and it's visceral, and it's just like the animation's so great. Like, so whichever way you're swinging, your weapon, the way it catches the zombie and sort of, sends them flying, so much fun. But the ending, my man, it is so friggin' difficult. I was like...
Interesting.
They do something I really like when games do it, where when you first start playing the game, you're going to encounter a boss character. After you encounter that boss later, that type of zombie is now just wandering the streets.
Oh.
And so it's like, it kind of adds that challenge.
When I think of a boss in a zombie game, I think of like a big bloated guy carrying chains. Is that a boss in this game?
You're pretty close, because they've got the big bloated zombie that spits at you, the big tough like muscular zombie that does, comes at you and
steroid
is
zombie,
like a tank. Yeah, basically steroid zombie.
Roid rage zombie.
Man, they added a new one, very clever design. It's called the Whipper, and it's like very like hipster looking girl at the music festival that has her intestines like rolled around her arm and extended way out, and she comes out and is like whipping you like with a whip, but it's like,
my goodness,
uncoiled intestines.
And you don't want to get hit with that, because what gets squeezed out of those intestines but yesterday's festival food?
Your biggest challenge is getting hepatitis.
3-day-old corn dog coming out of the zombie intestines.
I might be wrong about which diseases you get, but I don't have a lot of experience with that.
Yeah, I don't think they took kept that in mind when they thought of punching through zombies. You're getting stuff all over your extremities,
all sort of diseases. But yeah, they throw every boss encounter at you all at once at the end of this, and so I haven't beaten it yet, because sometimes you just want to relax, and I do find it relaxing to just go around like the early game areas and just like try to clean up some side missions and kill zombies. Very chill. This part is not chill. Well, I'm gonna have to get good and go back and finish it at some point. What have you been playing?
So I talked about RoboCop, which I picked up on the Steam Summer Sale, I think 2 episodes ago, or maybe it was last episode of Normal People Gaming Podcast, and it really disappoints.
Oh, really?
The trailer was kind of cool, and initially what I liked about it was they got the licensing for everything in the classic RoboCop film. All the actors, Lois, the police chief.
And that's a big deal. People sometimes don't realize it, but that's why a lot of games will have new versions of these characters, because it is tough to get those licenses.
Yeah, and so I was expecting something that would be really well done. Unfortunately, the entire game, I've been through, I guess, the first major mission, and the story is like really cheesy. The acting and like the animations are bad, and then the worst part of it all is the gameplay itself is just you're lumbering around, which, yeah, you're RoboCop, but
sure,
it just doesn't, like, being RoboCop should be awesome. You should be able to feel that extra power and strength, and they didn't nail it. And then one thing, either something happened and maybe it is in the game, but what I noticed is the iconic gun ejection from his thigh, from his leg, or from his hip.
Yeah.
That sound effect is not the sound effect in the game for it. I'm like, they went through the trouble of all the licensing to put all the people in there. And the game actually looks really
crazy.
Good. But then it's like little things like that sound effect is missing. The gameplay's all off. The story is subpar. And the acting sucks. It's too bad.
That's too bad.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's why it was on sale. But there you go.
When I first saw gameplay, my initial reaction was that it was not good. And over time, it's like they won me over. And so to hear you say this, it's like, wow, was my initial gut reaction correct? And then I talked myself out of it.
Right.
That's interesting.
Because it feels very clunky.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. We just said that at the same exact time. Yeah, it's clunky. And then it feels undercooked as well. Like you're picking up evidence and you don't even care about the evidence. At least I didn't. Like I would see it, I would go pick it up, but it was, I don't know, like to
Does it
compare,
just like add a percentage? Like
I don't even, it didn't even do anything.
Complete.
Maybe at the end of the game, you get like a score out of it, or I didn't even care because the way it was presented, I guess, like you're not like searching for it. There's no discovery. It's just kind of like laying around.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
you
the
just
weapons.
open like your scanner, right? And it's just like glowing.
Right. Yeah. It's a skip. But I did pick up a couple other games that were on sale. I picked up, and you're going to love this, Middle Earth Shadow of War.
Right.
I didn't even realize this game existed, so I'm super excited. Now, please tell me that that's the same gameplay, essentially, as Shadow of Mordor.
Here's where I kind of landed with Shadow of War. Yeah, it is a sequel to Shadow of Mordor, which we've talked about, both of us, it's one of our favorite games. Shadow of War, I don't have anything negative to say about it. For whatever reason, I started playing Shadow of War, and then I stopped, and I've never gone back.
There's no compelling reason. You're like, I don't need to go play this right now.
Yeah.
Not like Dead Island.
Yeah.
Where you're like, that was so fun. I got to get back in there and kill some zombies.
I don't know why I stopped playing, but the feeling that I was getting from the game was that they had built in some grind to it, because this was right around when like the first game just felt like a solid game, and then they were like, we're gonna make some more money off this game by adding DLC.
Yeah.
Whereas Shadow of War felt like they were putting a lot of live service stuff and experimenting with that type of thing. That's the unfortunate thing, right? With so many games out there, is someone might say, oh, you played that. Did you like it? You know what? I'm not sure. I stopped and I started playing. Oh, you stopped playing, so you don't like it. Not necessarily, because there's hundreds of games out there calling our attention at all times.
I actually, with RoboCop, I put it down, I played it, and then 2 weeks later, I came back to it. And I'm like, let me give this a second shot. Maybe I wasn't in the right frame of mind. Nope. Garbage.
Yeah.
So I actually uninstalled it, and
wow. We'll
never play it again, basically, even though I now own it.
Right. Man, that's
but
crazy.
Life is short.
But I know that feeling. Yeah, I know that feeling. Yeah, you're right. Like, you don't have time to be playing mediocre games.
Nope, we don't have time for that. I also picked up Batman Arkham Knight, which is, I loved the other Batman games in that series. They're so well done. And it's just it's similar to Shadow of Mordor, and it's just timing, hack and slash type game.
So fun, yeah.
So we'll see if that one gets installed or not, but whatever, it was super cheap.
Yeah, these sales, like, they're so cheap.
And then I picked up Disco Elysium, which you have been recommending to check out for some time. So I haven't tried it yet, but I'm excited to try that.
Sort of, because Basically, I haven't played it either.
Oh, you haven't? Oh,
and
okay.
No, I really want to, because I keep hearing, like, I'll see threads that are like, what is a game that's basically like amazing and there's nothing like it? And I always see people saying this game, Disco Elysium.
And I have a category of these games. I heard the same thing about the Stanley Parable.
Right.
Never installed it. It's sitting in my library untouched, and I'm like, oh, I want to play that, but then I end up opening up some other game.
I feel like I think I played that game, but I don't remember if I played it, because if a game pops up for sale very cheap, like $2 or $3, like Kingdom Come Deliverance, now I just remembered that I did buy that on the Xbox sale, because it was $3, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to add that to my collection.
Yeah,
and we'll see.
What type of game is that? I'm not familiar with it.
So Kingdom Come Deliverance it's an RPG, like it's medieval times, but what's to me the selling point is it's an RPG of that time period that is not, there's no magic, there's no mythology, it's all 100% like grounded in reality. So that alone makes it interesting, right? Because it's like purely historical.
They can focus on history instead of making up magical components of the game.
Yeah, that and sword fighting, basically.
Sword play.
It's supposed to have like a very good sword play element to it.
Oh, I picked up Control Ultimate Edition. Have you ever heard of that game?
Heard about it and played it.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of Control. I love Remedy. I love their games. You know, when speaking of like not having time to play games, Alan Wake is a great example, because Alan Wake came out, like the original came out at the same time as Red Dead Redemption. And I felt so bad for that team, because I also, like, I had to choose, and I chose Red Dead Redemption at the time. Then when I finally got around to playing Alan Wake, I was like, whoa, this is one of my favorite games of all time now.
Right.
Control is made by the same team. I don't like it as much as Alan Wake, but it's still incredibly solid.
Yeah, it looked like a lot of fun, just kind of like the gameplay mechanics and the visuals, all that. So definitely try that out.
The gameplay is super fun. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, we should talk about some of the news in the world of gaming. Big news story for fans of No Man's Sky.
Yes.
In that they just announced and released a huge update. So this update is called Worlds Part 1.
That's a pretty epic name.
Yeah.
It implies a part 2.
Yeah. I'm so excited for the part 2, because I have no idea what they're going to do. Well, no, that's not true. I've got some ideas, and we'll talk about it. But first, let's talk about part 1. So for anyone that doesn't know, in No Man's Sky, generally, which I've played a ton, generally the gameplay loop is, first, it's sort of like a survival game, but then over time, honestly, like, you get enough upgrades to your suit and ship and everything that only the first half hour is like a tough survival game. And then after that, it sort of becomes this chill, just explore space. It's all seamless. So you fly like from space into the atmosphere, through the clouds. You're flying over the planet. There's not a ton it's so different from Starfield. And so it's...
Does every planet have clouds? Is that how they hide the transition? Or exist? Like maybe space outside the planet is part of the same cell? And then do you warp to the next planet, or you can actually fly to the next planet, right?
No, I mean, you can just fly to the next planet. They have different speeds.
It's basically Minecraft in terms of how they procedurally generate it, probably. So whatever's visible is getting...
Yeah, it's somewhat Minecraft. But no, they don't hide transitions with clouds. Honestly, it's very seamless. There could be no clouds sometimes, and you'll see the land, and you'll be zooming at high speed towards it, and everything just generates. It's just all right before your eyes. So I don't like to compare to Starfield because Starfield doesn't have that, but Starfield has a ton of other stuff. And there's things that both games do well. And I love both games. This has me excited. I'm going to get back into No Man's Sky with this because what they've done is they've revamped how everything looks. One of the biggest changes that they have made is how water looks. So the oceans actually have waves now.
Right.
Before it was all right, but it was just sort of this big flat ocean with almost no movement, just a general, water texture. It looks great. I'm excited to get back into it and explore.
I just watched the trailer right before this, which was, as of this recording, I think dropped today or yesterday. While I do own No Man's Sky and I've played probably 20 minutes only, this trailer got me excited. I mean, it looks beautiful.
Yeah.
And I would like to jump in the game again and, start playing because it got me excited.
Yeah. What's nice is whereas Starfield has more with story and characters and stuff, No Man's Sky doesn't really have that. It does have a story, but it's not as much.
It's just more of a big sandbox, right?
Yeah, it's more of a sandbox. It's just fun and it has multiplayer. So what's cool is, you and I could be on a planet at the same time and we could actually be exploring the same place. Another thing that I think is important to point out is Hello Games, the developers behind No Man's Sky, they are working on another game that they showed a trailer of called Light No Fire.
Yep.
In their deep dive for this No Man's Sky update, they basically stated what a lot of us thought, which is they're working on Light No Fire and they're taking some of that tech that they're building and bringing it to No Man's Sky. And I gotta say, thank you very much. Please it's beta testing, right?
It is, yeah.
Yes, bring all that awesome tech that you're working on for Light No Fire for your next game. Please keep dumping it into this game, keeping it alive, keep giving us something to do, and giving us sort of a preview of what's to come.
Kudos to Hello Games and Sean Murray for really continuing to support No Man's Sky.
Yeah.
And it feels a little like Starfield is coming out with Shattered Space, and they also have been doing some fairly big updates. It kind of feels like a space competition, which is all great for gamers who love that genre.
Yeah.
I'm not complaining, but it's almost like who can one-up the other person with their trailer and with the add-ons that they're doing for the games. And
that's the thing, right? They always say, competition is good for the consumer. And it's if there's more than one space game out there, that's why us as fans, we should not be fighting each other. We should not be saying, fighting this battle of which game is better, because just the fact that both of these games exist is good for all of the fans. They're not going to say it. They never mention each other outright.
Right.
Clearly, there are things that Starfield sort of got that were already in No Man's Sky. And there are things that No Man's Sky just in their last update got ship customization, for crying out loud, which people have wanted for years. And they wouldn't do it. All of a sudden, Starfield comes out with ship customization and then, oh, now we're going to get it in No Man's Sky? Yeah, okay. But it's great.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Here's another funny example, Helldivers 2, right? So Helldivers 2, a lot of people have mentioned there's obvious parallels to Starship Troopers. People feel like it's an unofficial Starship Troopers game. Well, here's what's funny. They teased the new expedition for No Man's Sky. Expeditions are these sort of time-locked missions that you can do that you have a month and a half to do them. You're fighting bugs. Sean Murray says this is inspired by Starship Troopers. And I thought, it's so funny that they just can't mention the other game, right? Clearly this is Helldivers 2 is successful. they say, let's put a little bit of that in our game. But is there some unwritten rule that games can't mention the other games that inspire them?
I think it would make headlines, and it would probably lead to negative press. So they have to be very careful in their PR and what they mention. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I think, savvy gamers are going to know exactly what's happening here. It's a Helldivers, edition, essentially.
It's so like that meme of like, Mom, can we have Helldivers 2? No, we have Helldivers 2 at home, and Helldivers 2 at home is this new expedition. It's like, and don't get me wrong, I say that, I joke, but guys, I love No Man's Sky. I'm not hating. I'm excited.
Yep. A lot of these updates to big games like this are inspired by other video games, and modders are often inspired by other video games, and they often want to bring those things into games when the developers won't do something, like in No Man's Sky where they're adding these expeditions.
Yeah.
And that's actually a really good thing, because you saw an article about CD Projekt.
Yeah, so the CD Projekt lead says that half of the people making quests for Cyberpunk 2 right now are former modders.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. These are people that are passionate about the game, and they decided to go in and they self-taught themselves how to use the tools. Yeah. They sat down and painstakingly figured out all the little intricacies of the tools, how to use them, how to get stuff to run. It's not as easy, and it's not as hard, I should say, as one would think. Sometimes it's easy, but getting bigger mods and mods that do things that the game isn't necessarily set up to do can be very challenging.
Right, yeah. That can be really challenging. But you're right, it's easy to get started with depending on the games. I loved seeing the story because you've said it in the past. You've said it to anyone listening. If you want to work in video games, start modding.
Yeah.
And here you have an actual project lead of one of the biggest developers right now saying, yep, they hired people that were modders.
That's right. And that's actually how I got my first salary job in gaming. I had worked as a seasonal tester at Electronic Arts and some other companies, but I actually got my first full-time salary position at a little boutique studio in LA based on mods I did at home in my spare time on a first-person shooter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I encourage anybody who is interested in getting into game development to start modding your favorite game. And it does help to mod larger titles. Back in my day, it would have been like the Half-Life, Half-Life 2, games where your mod can be seen and actually downloaded and played by a lot of people. Starfield might be a good example now. Or Skyrim, something like that. Yeah, or even Cyberpunk 2077. Yeah, I think we thought Cyberpunk 2077 was going to die, but then they fixed it. And now apparently modders are flocking to it. And a lot of those modders got hired at CD Projekt. Is it CD Projekt Red or is it CD Projekt?
Yeah, it's actually CD Projekt Red. They're working on the next Witcher game first.
Oh, are they?
Yeah. They actually, it kind of made me laugh because there was an article where the head of CD Projekt Red was saying that the new Witcher game was the most technologically advanced game they've ever made. And I was just like, yeah, it'd be weird if it wasn't.
What you just said reminded me of what I was going to say back for No Man's Sky. There was an advance in quantum computing. How they measure, the advances was it took this quantum computer 20 seconds to do what a normal computer would have taken 10,000 years to do.
Oh, wow.
Something ridiculous like that. So it made me think that we could be within, I don't know, definitely within our lifetime, but within the next couple of years, probably, we could see no limitations on video games.
Yeah.
There's very few, I don't know if I can say that right now, that there's few limitations, but we could get to a point where there's no graphical hindrances. So you could have as detailed environment as you want because the computing power has outpaced what people can put against it.
That will be really exciting once once there's no limitation for graphics and how it'll look, it's all just artistic decisions. With the film industry now, it's gotten so much easier for people to get the tech to make a film.
Right.
But do you have the storytelling? You know, do you have the storytelling ability? It's a shame because in the past, you know, in the 80s, you might have been a person with great storytelling instincts, but the price of film was so expensive.
It was so hard to make a movie because of like just getting a film camera alone was thousands of dollars, and then to actually buy film was hundreds of dollars, and then to process it was hundreds of dollars.
When you look at like Kevin Smith and like a lot of indie directors, you know, at that time, like a lot of their first films were black and white because color film was just so much more expensive.
Yeah, I have an early film book. It's How to Shoot a Movie on a Used Car Budget, something like that.
Okay, yeah.
Now it's like you don't even need 5,000. You know, this was like you need between 5,000 and 10,000 to actually make a film, to make a short film. Was the premise of this book. This book is obsolete now because you have everyone has a phone or whatever, and they could shoot whatever they want.
Yeah, so video games get in there too. That would be cool.
My entire life, video game technology has been limited by the processing capability. I think we could get to a point where it's the opposite, where you're no longer limited by computing power. You are limited by time and imagination and resources to actually make the graphics. So that'll be an interesting transition.
Yeah, and speaking of computing power for video games, you know, Resident Evil 7, which looks amazing already, like it's an older game. It looked amazing and still does on like Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. You can play it on phone now, right? So it released on iOS not too long ago, but a report from Video Games Chronicle says that it's been purchased by fewer than 2,000 people. It's not a lot for a big popular game.
That is appallingly low. That seems like a mistake.
I know, yeah.
It's shocking because Resident Evil has sold millions and millions of copies on multiple platforms, and yet 2,000 measly copies on iOS. Is it a lot of iOS people are now skewing older and don't want to play Resident Evil? I mean, what could be the reason?
I think the opposite. I think iPhone games skew towards younger. I do think there's sort of like a divide. There's the younger kids that play on mobile, and then there's the, you know, the older people that, you know, they play more casual stuff on their phone. Here's the thing is, like, I'm intrigued by Resident Evil on iPhone, but I'm not willing to shell out for a game that, number one, I've already played. So I've already played it, and then, you know, I saw this comment on Reddit that I totally agree with. They said, boy, you know what really gets me in the mood for horror is getting notifications like at the top of the screen every 5 minutes from my friends. And yeah, like these types of games just don't lend themselves to playing on an iPhone. I do think it's cool that it's there.
Yeah, and you're gonna play this on the subway and in broad daylight, or you know, who knows?
I mean, these games are so dark. Like, if the sun is shining, you're not gonna see what's going on.
Yeah.
So there's Apple releasing games on iPhone. Yes, they're also releasing on MacBook. As a person who, I need a MacBook to do video editing and all that stuff. That's my preferred platform for artistic stuff. Do I like that they are trying to get more into the gaming space? Sure. Man, you've got to do more than just port games that we all played years ago.
Right. You need a killer title.
You need a killer title. You need something like Xbox had Halo and Gears of War and, you know, whatever else they do. And then, of course, Sony's got their Spider-Man and Uncharted, all that stuff. Last of Us. You've got to have your exclusives. Don't get me wrong, I would love to live in a world where we all can play all games. I would even say not even exclusive. If only these games came out at the same time on the MacBook, then even that would be a step above. But they usually port games at we've already played.
Right. It's definitely after the fact.
Look, I'm impressed with what they're able to do just because you could not play games on the MacBook a long time ago. You could only go to PC. So it is nice that these things are starting to pop up.
Yeah. You don't open up your Microsoft emulator and run Windows on your MacBook so you can play all the Steam games.
Yeah, it's not worth hacking everything just to like get it running. Not for me anyway.
Yeah.
This is sort of my same argument with Switch. I think the Nintendo Switch is great for Nintendo games and some third-party stuff, but seeing like sometimes like I'll see, oh, they're finally going to port this game from 5 years ago to the Nintendo Switch. And I'm like, well, I feel like that's for people that didn't play it. But for anyone that did, I don't know why I would need to play it again and a lesser form of it. We talked about No Man's Sky. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I know, No Man's Sky is online multiplayer everywhere else except the Switch. So it came to the Switch, single player only. Tell me that that's not a worse version of the game.
Right.
You know, I do think this Resident Evil 7 thing, these other games coming to MacBook and iPhone or whatever, I do like it. I like that they're doing it. I like that they're moving in towards gaming. I just feel like it, you know, more needs to be done. Again, I'm not going to rebuy it. So
yeah.
I hope that they continue to move that way.
And you don't want someone who's going to experience Resident Evil 7 for the first time. Do you really want to have them experience it on a phone, like David Lynch says?
Like, yeah, David Lynch. I could feel you channeling David Lynch for that moment. And yeah, they have like the touch controls on the screen, and
yeah, you showed your handheld attachment to your phone. It might be okay with that, but like,
yeah,
most people don't have that, so it'd be like the touch controls, which are a nightmare for anyone over 15, I would think.
Yeah.
Unless it's a very basic game. Like, I can play a basic game on there and not care, but if I'm trying to stealthily move around and switch weapons and do stuff, I don't want to do it on little touch buttons.
AAA games, man, they are tough to play on an iPhone.
Yep. Do you know what would not be tough to play on an iPhone?
What?
The horniest FPS in years, which has come to Game Pass, Neon White. Actually, it might be kind of hard to play that on the phone because, number one, you wouldn't want people watching you play this very...
not on the subway.
Not on the subway. Very racy and suggestive.
I was going to ask you, like this headline intrigued me. The horniest FPS in years. What makes it qualify for such a title?
I don't know. That's the frustrating part. I read 3 different articles and they tiptoed around this. They all kind of said it was very racy and seductive, but they didn't give explicit examples or specific examples. So I'm intrigued. And all they said was it's super fun. And I'm like, okay, it sounds like it's a fun game.
That's what's interesting about games journalism, right? Is like they say it, but then no one wants to say like why it is. Like I've seen one thing from the Kotaku article which says it has BDSM girlies is the words that they use.
Yeah, the subtitle says Neon White is cringy, exhilarating, wildly inventive, and deeply horny.
Yeah, okay.
As you read the article, they never really talk about, they never support that. So it might be a little clickbait ish.
It could, yeah.
So, I don't know. It got me, though.
Which is also a statement on the world of games journalism, unfortunately. It's get people to click.
Yeah.
But hey, it's on Game Pass, so any one of us that want to see why it's being called the horniest FPS in years, that's an option.
Go find out.
I do see it, you know, just from the covers, it looks very anime.
Right.
Definitely. And it's actually very cartoony, which was not what I was expecting. It looks almost like cell shaded, unless this is just a...
It did look cell shaded. I agree with that.
Yeah.
You know, an interesting way to get around blatant sexism and misogyny Not that you want to go around it, but I'm just saying, like, it seems like this game has accomplished something, which is make your characters animals, but super duper sexy animals. And then you don't have to worry about objectifying humans, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh boy, these things are sexy, and hey, it's okay. You could show cleavage and, you know, curvy outfits because they're not actually humans. They are animal-like anime things.
Or they have animal masks, or you know. And
I don't know for sure what's going on in the game, but I'm just saying, like, that could be the reason why.
A lot of people are calling it very stylish, which, you know, from the look of it, yes, I would agree. It's very stylized. And, you know, like you were talking about, like getting around that and kind of like making games sexy. Because, like, that's a criticism that some gamers have.
Mm-hmm.
Games are becoming, you know, they're lamenting that games are becoming less sexy over time.
Right.
I don't know that that's necessarily true. I think games are growing up. There's a lot of games that I didn't bat an eyelash, you know, 10, 20 years ago, that today I might feel a little bit of cringe trying to play it, especially in front of someone.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's funny because those remastered editions have a little disclaimer now that's like, hey, you know, sorry about this. We were wrong. We've updated some of it.
You know what's funny, though? I love when they don't update it, but they put the disclaimer.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about having your cake and eating it, too. This is the feeling I get, and I'm not criticizing anyone, but I get the feeling that some of these games are like, they put the disclaimer like, hey, man, it was a different time, but enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know?
And now,
like, it's...
Now that we've gotten that message out of the way, enjoy your cake.
You should just do whatever you want as a developer, as an artist. Do whatever you want. Just put a disclaimer up at the beginning and be like, hey, I don't agree with this.
Right.
Anyway, here's the game I made.
Well, this particular game, what's it called? Neon White?
Neon White.
The developer, his last game was like this wholesome kids game. And he even says it in the game trailers, like, here's the last game I made. It's a very wholesome kids game. And here's the new deviant, you know, adult game that I made, which, you know, is kind of funny.
This is so similar to any pop star that they start with like the clean cut girl next door, and then they
Miley Cyrus, and then she's naked on a wrecking ball.
Yeah, they hit that age where they're like, well, they got to reinvent themselves and show how, guys, I'm an adult now and I'm crazy. We'll see if I download this or decide that it's not worth getting caught playing it.
After hours gaming.
You know, speaking of horny video games, Hideo Kojima, who made the Metal Gear series, which anyone who's played, it's got its horny moments in it.
Do they?
But also one of my favorite series. Yeah.
I've only played the really old ones. Like the Nintendo one is one that I played the most back in the day.
Oh,
and then I think I played the PlayStation one. Yeah. But I haven't played any of the modern ones whatsoever. I need to try those. Ever
since the PlayStation 1, they've got their little, it's got pervy charm, I'll say. I'll call it that. They have their little pervy moments. Yeah. Great series, though. I love that series. But 37 years later, a report from Games Radar says that Hideo Kojima says that Metal Gear, the original one, the one that you played on NES, was so ahead of its time, not because of the stealth action, but because of the portable radio.
Interesting.
I find this interesting. Yeah, it's interesting because, first off, let's not kid ourselves. It was also ahead of its time because of the stealth.
Oh, yeah.
Because at the time, everything was action, shoot.
There was nothing stealthy like that game when it came out.
Yeah.
For sure.
This was the first game where you actually had to sneak around, which, if you think about it, requires so much more computing. Like, think of like those simple games. You know, Mario had enemies with predetermined animations. You just had to not let them run into you. You just had to jump on them.
Yeah.
And now you have like an enemy that has like a cone of vision that you have to avoid. So that's a big deal.
Yeah.
But I get what he's saying. The radio. Think about that time period. Being able to call a support staff or have them call you and get information, give information.
Is that how it worked?
Yeah, as I remember it, yeah. You could actually call for help.
So that would have been revolutionary compared to pretty much everything else that was out on the market at that time, where you would just get cutscenes, or you would in the level and something would happen, and there was not a sub-menu gameplay element like that, or there were far and few between, I should say that much. And then after that came out, then you started to see a lot more.
I think it's interesting, and I'm a huge fan of him as a creator and as a game developer. And in one game, basically he had multiple innovations, at least two, right? The stealth and the radio. These were two big innovations, and having one of your innovations completely overlooked because you also did something else amazing, like, it just doesn't shock me that it would be Hideo Kojima that this would happen to. Because I do think he's an innovator.
Oh, absolutely. That happens quite often in these revolutionary moments in film and video games, where there's such a inspirational and innovative atmosphere that multiple things come out of it.
Yeah.
But usually, you're right, there's like one thing that everybody latches onto, and then some of the other stuff is kind of forgotten about until people do deep dives years later, and they're like, okay, now this game, it had a lot of firsts that we didn't really think about.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because this happens to me with games and movies and music and albums, where something will come out and I like it, I love it, it's great and I'm enjoying it, but I don't realize how special it is until later. People still talk about the Tomb Raider, the reboots. The Tomb Raider video games, when they came out, already looked amazing graphically. And whenever a game comes out that looks amazing, there's this thing in my brain where I go, awesome, this is what games look like now. No, not always true, because then other games will come out, they don't look as good. And then years later, you're looking back at these games that still look amazing, and you go, oh, okay. Like, I was taking it for granted. I thought that was just the new thing for all games. No, it was just that particular game had that much, either love and care put into it or amazing technology.
Yeah, I think getting back again to RoboCop, that's why it was such a disappointment, because it's a collection of things. The sum of those parts don't create something better. It's just Unreal Engine or whatever engine they slapped this first-person shooter on. They got the licensing.
Yeah.
They poured that on. They stirred it all together. They got the voice actors, and somebody wrote some story, and it's just kind of meh. Maybe it was missing that auteur.
Yeah.
Like Metal Gear Solid had one person who cared so much about it that they were implementing these revolutionary things in video games that we hadn't seen before.
It's such a balance, because I see some directors getting a bad rap for being very pushy. Oh, it's got to be this way. Maybe you have to strike that balance, because you don't want to be too pushy where you have an abusive workplace, but then you don't want to sacrifice on vision either.
Yeah.
And yeah, from what you're telling me about RoboCop, I can deal with bad graphics, which I guess that's the one thing they've got, right? They've got Unreal, so it looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, it looks good.
I don't know if they use the Unreal Engine, but I just threw that out there because it's
as an example,
available.
Right. I can deal with bad graphics when it's a fun game. I can deal with bad story when it's a fun game. People in our Discord, which if you haven't joined, make sure you join, because it's an awesome place. The link is in the show notes below.
Yes.
In the Discord, somebody asked me, hey, do you recommend Ghost Recon Breakpoint? I see you recommending it. And it was on sale. And I'm like, oh yeah, if it's on sale, yes. And I told him, The story is stupid. The voice acting's terrible. It's got all these problems, but the gameplay is so fun. Like, it looks awesome and it plays awesome. And I think that that's okay when it's a video game. You've got to have at least one good element that makes it worth playing.
Yeah.
And if you sort of just go mid on every single element, there's no point.
Yeah, a good opposite of RoboCop would be like Max Payne, the last one that came out on PC. I can't remember the number. Was it 4? Or
no, they're only up to 3. They had I know Max Payne. I didn't know that one came out for PC, but that wouldn't surprise me because
the cutscenes and like just everything about that particular game is amazing. Like, it's really cinematic and well done. The voice acting's great.
I love Max Payne 3 did this awesome thing where you would have a shotgun, and then when you switch to pistol, the shotgun doesn't magically disappear like most video games. Right. He is holding it down at his side in his left arm, and then he pulls the pistol out with his right. So freaking cool. Yeah. That attention to detail, I love that game.
We forgot to bring that up when we were talking about gun animations in our last Starfield podcast. But that's a good example of like a cool swapping guns. They didn't have to do that, but they went the extra mile.
Yeah. No one would have been bothered if they didn't do it, but they did it, and I love details. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll still see that in games today because the player wants to be able to switch weapons quickly. So sometimes they don't want to sit through an animation, but if it's done well, it can be fine. And if it's realistic, it does take time to switch like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, lastly in news, we should talk about 2 major influencers that kind of had controversies. That's Dr. Disrespect and Sketch.
Yeah.
Now, these are influencers that I was definitely aware of, but I'm not really at the age where I care or watch either one of these.
Yeah, you don't sit and watch,
I knew about the memes like the What's Up Brother and Tuesday, and just watching Dr. Disrespect and kind of seeing some of his streaming as well as like how he interacts with people like conventions and stuff. Definitely on my radar, but why I wanted to bring it up because they both had these controversies kind of happen the last couple of weeks, and they were just very different. So Dr. Disrespect was busted talking to minors and basically completely destroyed his multi-million-dollar gaming career in seconds. Seconds to disaster. And then Sketch, who I'm a little less familiar with, I had seen him on TikTok and YouTube a little bit, but apparently some of his OnlyFans content was from years prior was outed.
Right.
Because of the context of it, I guess, and the fact that the story around it was a little more understandable.
Yeah.
The community kind of rallied behind him from my understanding, and like some of his fellow streamers, and I don't know if he's on, I'm going to sound really ignorant here, but I think he might be on a team or something like that, but they backed him up.
Right.
Other influencers in the same space rallied behind him. Yeah, I just thought that was interesting. I thought it was worth bringing up because it was big news in terms of like gaming influencers.
Yeah, so what I really like about this is obviously Dr. Disrespect's situation. From what we know, his situation is just awful because
it's abhorrent.
Yeah, he's communicating, saying inappropriate things to minors over text and whatever. Even when he came out and defended himself, he's just like, I didn't do anything illegal. And it's like, oh, okay.
I'm a scumbag, basically.
It's like, yeah, we're right on that line of like, you might not have done anything that will put you in jail, but it's like, dude, no one is on your side with this. Like, it's just being gross.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other side, you've got Sketch, who I will admit, like, this is all very new to me, but from what it sounds like, just was okay, doing something that, resembles sex work, but nothing's inappropriate, right? Like nothing is wrong with it.
The bad part of it, if there is a bad part of it, is that he had a drug addiction, is what I heard. and he was supporting his drug addiction with OnlyFans content.
I see. And that's sad.
Sad.
That's the thing. The only thing that is, it's sad. And the thing is, like, there is, oh my God, it's such a complicated issue, like the whole world of sex work, that you would need hours and hours and hours of podcast to get into. To sum it up, in my opinion, it's like, we should not shame sex work. Yes, we should recognize that there is an ugly side of it, where if someone feels like that's all they can do, or that's what they have to do to survive, no shame on them. But it is a shame on our society, like, because if someone wants to do sex work, let's not shame them. Right. If they don't want to and feel like they have to, that's a problem.
Yeah.
But it's not their problem.
No.
It's the problem with the world. But good for everyone that is rallying behind Sketch. As far as I'm concerned, if you didn't do anything inappropriate, whatever, it's like, great. Also, what I like about this story too is that this is a turnaround, a huge turnaround from how the world was just 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Oh, right.
Where if you got caught doing something like this,
he would have been completely humiliated.
You would be fired. Yeah, you'd be humiliated. We've got to stop doing that. People who feel like there's no option and like this is what they've got to do, or people that are addicted to drugs, but if they kick it, you've got to let people be better. And I would even, I'm not saying that this doesn't apply to Sketch, but I'm even going to throw in there people that did do something wrong, if they actually learn from it and actually pay for their sins, against society, and they improve. We've got to let people improve. But yeah, I'm not saying that's what happened with Sketch. So,
right.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm glad to see that people are not trying to shame this person out of existence.
Yeah, and we are not experts on this, so if you're a huge Sketch fan, don't add us, because this is just kind of a story in passing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for being educated. I'm always the first to say, as soon as I have new information or more information, I will reevaluate how I feel and what I say about things. But yeah, as of right now, that's where I stand.
Yep. Well, that does it for this episode of Normal People Gaming. We'd like to thank everyone that contributes to our Patreon. We do have a Patreon, Michael.
Yeah, we do. Patreon is a very important way for us to kind of just keep this show going and give more value to our listeners. And it's just a really fun way for us to connect.
Hey, if you used to support Dr. Disrespect and now you're looking for a new way to contribute, check out our Patreon.
I would recommend. I'd recommend us. Yeah, for sure. But we have our Patreon and we have our legendaries that we always like to thank at the end of every episode. We have our other sister podcast as well, Starfield with Normal People. So, still at the end of this episode, I want to thank Bergenstock, Brian, Space Cadet, Kittalahara, Rampage, American X, Cherry Bomb RN, Griffin, and Zigrubrox. These are our legendary subscribers on the Patreon. But hey, you can actually get some other goodies as well as all of these episodes ad-free and early for as little as $1 a month.
Yes, indeed. And thank you to everyone that listens on streaming and to those watching on YouTube. All links are provided in the show notes below.
Super special thanks for comments and feedback. If you have a comment or a suggestion, just leave it right on our YouTube page, or you can come chat with us in the Discord.
And if you like the show, consider dropping a 5-star review on your favorite podcast app. That would really help us out.
Thanks for hanging out with Normal People Gaming, and make sure you subscribe because we will be back for more.
See ya.